Hi everyone, it's Monica and welcome back to day 2 of 12 Days of Christmas. Today we're going to be working with one of the new stamp releases from Stampers Anonymous called Doodle Greetings. Now what I really like about this stamp set is that it doesn't take much to create a really pretty card with these sentiments. The sentiments are big enough that they pretty much fit on an A2 card, and you don't have to do a lot to create a beautiful card. Now for this design, I'm going to actually be working with an embossing folder from sizzix. And I really like this embossing folder. It's a wonderful framed embossing folder, so it leaves lots of room for a big sentiment like the one I'm going to be working with today. And I'm also going to be working with some Tim Holtz paper called Craft Core. It's the Shattered collection. Now this paper has some wonderful texture, and when you emboss it and then take some sandpaper to it, it creates a wonderful vintage look. Now to begin, I cut my paper down to 4 by 6, and then I placed it into my embossing folder and ran it through my Big Shot. Now once I was happy with the impression, I took this sanding cube to the embossed portion of my paper. Now this cube I actually found at a beauty supply store in the nail section, but as you can see, it works great to actually sand over the embossed portion of my cardstock. Now this is actually the intent of this cardstock. It is craft paper, but it's craft paper that has color on top. So when you actually sand through the colored portion, it shows the craft portion of the cardstock, enabling you to create a really nice looking vintage card. So it gives you some nice contrast without having to go through a lot of effort. So using my MISTI, I did cut out a piece of cardstock measuring about 4 inches by 5 inches, and I wanted it actually a little bit bigger than the sentiment because I had planned on tearing the edges around it. I knew I was going to also emboss my sentiment, so I made sure to add some anti-static onto my paper as well. Now you all have seen me use my MISTI before, and I have to say that this stamping tool is probably one of the best purchases that I've done in 2016. It really has been a game changer for me. It's enabled me to have perfectly stamped images every single time. I can't tell you how many times I've actually ruined cardstock by not getting a good imprint the first time. And with the MISTI, if I don't get a good imprint my first time, I know that I can come back a couple more times and have it stamp in exactly the same place. So if you haven't finished your Christmas list yet, I would highly recommend you put this at the top of your list because it really is a wonderful tool, especially when you make as many cards as I do. So once I was finished stamping my sentiment using my black archival ink, I went ahead and added my clear embossing powder, and then I took my heat tool to it. Now when you turn on your heating tool, you're going to want to let it heat up for just a couple of seconds. This is because in order for embossing to react, it needs to be nice and hot. So if you actually just turn it on and go straight to your image, it actually will take a little bit longer to make the embossing part actually work. So just by taking that extra couple of seconds to let it heat up will actually save you time in the long run. Now I knew I was going for a vintage look on this card, so I decided to actually tear the edges of my sentiment rather than actually use my distress edger. I thought this would create more of a vintage Christmas card look. Now I could have easily used my distress edger to actually fray the sides of my cardstock, but I thought tearing the paper actually created a more dramatic look. And again, I was looking to create a more vintage style card, so I decided to actually tear the paper and then distress the edges using vintage photo distressing ink. So once I had a perfectly aged piece of paper, I went ahead and adhered it to that craft cardstock that we had embossed earlier. As you can see, the poinsettias created a perfect frame for this sentiment, and I really like how it's turning out. Now I could have easily stopped here, but of course I always like to go the extra step. So I decided to use some red baker's twine and tie that around the bottom portion of my card. And then I came in with some plastic snowflakes that I've had in my stash. These plastic snowflakes I've had for a couple of years, and it's really nice to actually start going through my stash and using some of the items that I've had for a few years now. Now I decided to use some gold thread to actually tie the snowflake to the red twine. The top of the snowflake had a little hole that I might have been able to fit a brad through, but I decided to actually use some gold twine. And then I used some glue dots to actually hold the snowflake in place. So from here, I adhered the top of my card to some white cardstock, and at that point my card was complete. So for your convenience, I will leave a list of all the products that I've used to create this card, along with the links to the stores. If you've enjoyed the video, I would sure appreciate a thumbs up, and don't forget to leave a comment, as I always love seeing your feedback. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button before you head out. I would hate for you to miss the next 10 cards and my 12 Days of Christmas series. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.